Hugo, thank you so much for being here. This is just an incredible place, an incredible crowd and event. So thank you to have this discussion about faith and civic life. And the way I'd like to kind of drive our conversation is kind of go from the inside out and start with really how your faith journey has perhaps really influenced your leadership in public service and perhaps even your decision to run and continue to be involved. I'd love to start with you, Governor.
Thank you. So first of all, good morning, everybody. And welcome to the Museum of the Bible. What an amazing place. Suzanne and I love this extraordinary demonstration of pulling people in as opposed to pushing people out. And so thank you all for coming. And every time I step through the doors of this amazing building, I'm reminded of all the work that has gone in to build it, but most importantly, the work that has gone into sharing it. So thank you all. For those of you who I have not met, which is a lot of you, I am not a career politician. And Suzanne and I made a big decision back in the middle of COVID to really step out of what was candidly a pretty cushy life. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, and when I was in 7th grade, my dad lost his job and our family moved down to Virginia Beach, and I kind of learned how to work hard at an early age, and went to college like a lot of folks, and ended up having a business career. And that business career led me to have the great privilege of running one of the largest investment firms in the world with another gentleman. We took over from founders at a place called the Carlyle Group. And that was my dream job. And I never thought that I would ever really step into public life. And I had a moment in my own prayer life that kind of changed everything. And that moment in my own prayer life was just a clear calling to step out of my job. And I kind of did what many people do, which is said, wrong number, Lord. And kind of tried to ignore it for a while because, of course, I was busy doing important things. And there was a moment where the weight became so unbearable that in the summer of 2020, I went and found Suzanne and asked her to go on a walk with me. And we got down to the bottom of the driveway. And remember, it's middle of COVID. I just finished up Zoom calls. And I looked at her at the bottom of the driveway and I said, I'm going to quit my job and run for governor. And with tears in her eyes and a quivering lip, she looked at me and said, Governor of what? She pulled out her phone immediately to dial 911. And that started this journey. And I have to say that we first determined that I was not having a mental breakdown, and we talked, and we talked a lot about how we felt stepping out of that life and into something that was truly scary. We prayed over it, and she looked at me and she said, I'm with you. And we dedicated ourselves to try to do this, and we make mistakes every single day, but to try to do this in a way that was consistent with our faith. And that is what we tried to do. I'll never forget, she said to me, honey, first of all, go figure out how we can win, because don't put our family through this unless there's a real path for us to serve the way we think we can serve. But we're going to run together, and if we lose, it's okay. We just want to do it in a way that we can be proud of. And so Suzanne in our marriage has always held me to a higher standard. I tell everyone, when you have an opportunity to commit yourself forever to someone who makes you better every single day, it is the perfect step. And I tell young people all the time when I speak with them at graduations and other places that the first most important decision you will make in your life is, do you accept Jesus into your life? The second is, who are you going to spend your life with? and I just am always thankful that she's kept me on an amazing path. So we decided to run, and that's how we got here, and we felt incredibly blessed every step of the way.
Well, thanks for sharing that journey. Suzanne, how has faith guided you in your role as First Lady of Virginia?
Well, I want to start with a good morning. I want to just compliment you, Sylvie and Stacy, who we met today, because you are really creating an environment for people to come together in what I would describe as fellowship. We use that word a lot, but I think it's important. And I think it's particularly important coming out of those COVID years where we were all so separated physically and emotionally, that we have a room full of people who are discussing ideas and cleaving together over this most wonderful aspiration, which is basically to love one another and respect one another. So thank you for what you're doing. Thank you all for participating. Just to tack on to what Glenn said, this has not been easy, and you really have to lean into your faith. And I think that's what we have done. I had the privilege of growing up in a Christian home. So my parents role modeled, I think, very faith-filled lives, as did my grandparents, as did my uncle, who was a theology professor. So growing up in Texas in the South, it was just a part of the fabric of sort of my reality. So when Glenn and I met, and he had grown up in what I would just describe as a Christmas Easter family, one of those, sort of agnostic, just a little complacent about it all. We had to have really difficult conversations about what our union could look like, because I just knew that I couldn't be the best partner in relationship if we couldn't talk openly and honestly and share in that. So I think that has guided our marriage and this journey. I mean, I married a business guy. That's what I thought I was getting into. And that's what we did for many, many years. And so then God put this on our plate. I went in kicking and screaming. But I do feel as if there is purpose in stepping out and making yourselves vulnerable, and we can talk about that a little more as we go along.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's funny that you call the policy circle kind of a fellowship, because when we started, so when we met, you're like, I think you're kind of creating a BSF of policy. And Angela Brawley sent me the booklet, and I was one of those more Christmas type Catholic practitioners, not that much of a person of faith, but I saw the book, and I saw how people can pour themselves into the study of the Bible and what it brings into your life, and what it brings, especially that calling to step in, to get involved. You need to have this higher calling and this belief that you're not alone, because it is a lonely journey, and it is one where you are faced with so many arrows coming your way that you need to find comfort amongst friends and family, but also from the above. So the one thing that faith organization bring is people together. They build social bonds, collaborations. I'd love to hear how in Virginia you've collaborated with faith-based organization in as a governor, and how that has shaped the relationship with those organizations.
When we came into this whole journey, we didn't know if we were going to win or not. And so for those of you that live in Virginia, thank you for hiring us. So thank you. But I wrote down, after we were fortunate enough to be hired, my 10 objectives of our administration. And I just keep it in my pocket, and I present it to the team twice a year and what we're trying to do. And in addition to making Virginia the best place to live and work and raise a family, and in addition to tackling some really big, important initiatives to do exactly that, I have an objective to be a light. And what does that mean? I think it means to bring into what we do every day those very clear expressions of godly love and translate that into the work. And it's almost that simple. And we forget sometimes that at the heart of everything we're doing, and whether we disagree on the specific policy avenue to get there, are basic principles about enabling human flourishing and respecting those foundational beliefs that are the core not just of the Commonwealth of Virginia, but out of our nation. And that translates into some pretty clear decision making. And it's things like, first of all, not being afraid or intimidated to pray. And it all starts there. And I think if we don't remember that when we invite in our Almighty Father, who we are created in the image of and endowed with certain unalienable rights, and among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, if we don't start there and ask for his input, well, then we're really engaging in folly. And so that's always step one for us. And I get asked all the time, so you kind of pray a lot, Governor. I'm like, yeah, that's what I do. And I was asked recently on one of the national networks, well, what about separation of church and state? And I said, yeah, I respect that, but I'm a Christian and I'm that first. And that doesn't mean I have to check my faith at the door. What it means is I bring it with me in what I do. I also don't impose it on anyone. I'm not, you don't have to be a Christian in order to be in our administration or to do great work or for us to be eager in order to engage in really important policy making and dialogue. But what that has translated to, I think, are some really important steps for us to identify at the heart some of the principles that then we go work in order to make happen. So I believe that parents are the most important aspect of a child's life. Full stop. Just parents. And therefore, a lot of what we do is about family and empowering parents. I want parents to have the first say in their children's lives. Doesn't mean that teachers and everyone else aren't huge parts of the team, and we should support all of that. But let's make sure parents are first. We believe strongly in family. And so we've worked incredibly hard in order to support particularly children without family. Kids in the foster care system who are not just trying to find a place to call home and put their head every night, but maybe a pathway to family. And one of the things that we worked incredibly hard on during this last legislative session was the idea of kinship care, which means that family, grandparents and aunts and uncles get first place in line when it comes to the next step in our foster care system. Historically, they had no status. And so many times a child would be placed with a stranger when there would be a grandparent who would be much better at supporting that child. So it's these kinds of steps which we pray over and then we pour ourselves into in order to try to be a light. I have to say that I've had some great fun feedback along the way. Suzanne and I in our household like to hold hands when we pray. It's amazing when you make people who aren't you, not make, when you invite people who to hold hands to pray, and they, feedback and say, we don't really like holding hands when we pray. I'm like, fine, don't hold hands, it's fine. And so there's been great learnings along the way about how to enable folks who have not really engaged in prayer to stop for a minute, and not forcing them to pray, but just to participate in the process is, I think, one of the ways that we invite people into things like the policy circle. We were just visiting before we came in about the critical aspect of finding your voice. And finding your voice, particularly for people like Suzanne and me, who would never been involved in politics before, and yet the minute that we stepped in, we're asked questions about things that I have never expressed verbally what was in my heart, and therefore finding the words that allow us to have that critically important discussion where it's an exchange of views, where you find your way towards maybe even a better, more complete perspective, and doing it in a way that, of course, represents civility. And I guess that's my last comment that I'll make, and then I'll pass it on to Suzanne, because she has really great thoughts here. One of the things that we committed ourselves to was to not engage in personal attacks. And I have to say, it's really hard. It is really hard, because this world is filled with personal attacks. Now, with great transparency, you want to debate policy with me, I will get red-faced. And I will be well prepared, and I will bring arguments that are based on not just the legal frameworks, but what I think is right and what I think is wrong. But we really challenge ourselves to try to do that in a way that doesn't attack the person, but in fact, the issue. And in this world, that's hard, because most of the time, it is structured the exact opposite way. It starts with, you are a bad person, and then it concludes with, this is what I think we should do. And so that's why I love the whole concept of small groups coming together and having fellowship and discussing that next step of what do we believe and how do we get there and what's the right policy to advocate for and how do we find our voice and then how do we inject that into our civic responsibility, because we're American citizens and that's part of our responsibility, which is to be engaged. And so finding that collective, I call it a lily pad, that unique spot where we can fully engage in what we know is right and what we know is wrong in a way with well-informed voices, I think is the advanced form of our democracy. And I just applaud you for trying to help us all get there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for saying that. And it's Suzanne, I would love to hear from you and how you are really bringing your faith in your day-to-day work and interaction with faith-based communities and the Virginians that you meet on your busy schedule.
Well, I think it's imperative that we embrace all advocacy groups, correct? So faith-based is just one really, really important one. But we have tried to adopt a partnership with faith-based communities across all of our programs. I mean, I'll give you two quick examples. One is with our reentry program for those in our prisons and jails in Virginia. Never in my wildest dreams, this is the sweet stuff. Like I said, I went in kicking and screaming, thinking, how in the world can a stay-at-home mother, support her husband in this, make her family vulnerable in this, and yet I get to sit at a table with really, really smart people who are trying to create good pathways for people that are reinventing their lives in communities across Virginia. And reentry is one of them. And so we look to places like Prison Fellowship and Good News Ministries and all of these entities that exist who are willing to roll up their sleeves, come alongside government, and really help every single Virginian made in the image of God. And so really there is no program, I would argue, that we're undertaking. You think about literacy. So our students came out of COVID with really dramatically tragic learning loss. You've all read about it, you all know about it. Well, government can't fix that, but teachers can, parents can, nonprofits can, tutors can. And so the First Lady's office is working with an amazing nonprofit called the Lifetime Enrichment Center, LEC, that was born out of a church in Virginia Beach, but now is a standalone nonprofit that goes into high-risk schools and provides tutors and role models for these kids. And so we said to our sisterhood network across the Commonwealth of Virginia, please volunteer your time, please get involved. If you're a retired teacher, if you're a mother who has a little bit of time, come work with us and work with, in the context of the governor's All in Virginia plan, to bring all of our students hope and opportunity. So those are just a few examples, but I would say
They volunteered in droves. I mean, it's been just
in droves. And so I just think that you have to think creatively about the needs of people and make sure you're marrying the hearts and the talents of people to the needs of other people. And who better than those who are walking in faith? And like Glenn said, I want to put an exclamation point on all faiths, because we do not limit this work to those who are stepping out in the Christian faith. We are seeing really dramatic things happen as we cross-pollinate different religious activism with the needs of Virginians, and it's really, really tremendous to
So
see.
can I just add, so as you all talk about these most important issues, I can just share with you a little bit of my own learnings on this journey that we've been on. Number one, no real issue is easy to solve. And the biggest failing that I believe that politicians make is they think there's a single bill, a single program, there's a magic wand that can be waved and we can solve that problem if we only did this one thing. Folks, that's a false narrative. These are really complex issues that require comprehensive solutions. And you take something which we talk about all the time, like recidivism, and the journey back from being a convicted criminal in our criminal justice system. Say, how do we address this? And the number of times people have walked in and said, if we just did this, if we just did this, we just did this. I don't believe in that. I believe in all of the above. And so what we always try to do is first identify the problem. And so this is my second big piece. Nothing simple. And problem definition is the biggest issue. Because when you step back and say, hey, what is the issue we're trying to address really? With facts, with a comprehensive understanding of the problem, well, then it can translate into a real solution that has to include multifaceted approach. And I do believe that once we get 8 or 10 things working against a single problem, we've got a real chance of addressing it. And guess what? 2 or 3 of them aren't going to work as well as others. But this whole process of understanding that part of the challenge that we have in our criminal justice system is we throw people back out of the criminal justice system ill-prepared to deal with society, and the same issues that have been causing them to get there in the first place aren't addressed. And so then we went and found out, well, the 6 big factors that impact whether they stay in or come out are pretty easy ones for us to assess. By the way, they need a job, and they need to be all of a sudden enrolled in healthcare. They need a place to live. They need to have a community around them, and it's a big part of what we do to get a community around them. And a lot of times that's a faith-based community. We need to make sure that they have mental health support, and they have to go see their probation officer. And if you do all those 6 things, you have an enormously higher route to success. And therefore, let's go make sure those 6 things are being done. And so we systematically go do it. And we will change the recidivism rate in Virginia, which is astronomically high. But the bottom line is, as we get through this, don't think that there are simple magic wand solutions to any real problem. And we've got to go do the work to figure out how to bring comprehensive solutions.
Yeah, that's that one of the premise of the policy circle is to bring people together around a round table. And the briefs that we produce, as many of you perhaps have read this brief about faith and civic life, provides an overview of what is the issue and what's the role of each layers of government, and leaves you with the avenues of what needle you want to move and how you want to engage, and gets you to understand the complexity of problems. I'd love for you to kind of share in closing, we just have 5 minutes left. For you, what advice do you have to leaders? We have met here in the room so many leaders of faith-based organization who are attacking really society's greatest challenges. What would be your advice, both of you, to them and to our politicians on how do they engage with government? Because the trends are worrisome. right now in terms of just accepting the value that faith-based organization brings and the support that they need to continue to thrive. And I'd love for you to share kind of your advice on how they can be more effective in working with the government in every layer. Do you want to start?
I think one of the big challenges we have is too often we look at the cup half empty. We didn't know what happened in state government. We didn't know much of anything, really. And so what we have found is that the vast majority of the human beings that are in state government are grotesquely generous, committed, determined, and very, very willing to work collaboratively. Don't believe the narrative that people are not putting themselves out there, because they are. And that's been hugely encouraging. The other thing is that we have found that too often we're talking about the bad stuff, right? So one of the things we committed to early on in our backyard during COVID with wine, how many of us did that? Talking, and I said...
Virginia wine.
Okay, Virginia wine. I said to Glenn, I just went on a listening tour, and I said, oh my goodness, Virginians are doing amazing things. They love one another. They're caring for one another. They're picking one another up. Why does no one tell this story? So we started the Spirit of Virginia Awards. We give 6 a year. I'm not going to digress on that. But it gives us an opportunity to go into communities and really act out, Matthew 5:16. Cast your light before others so they may see the good works and praise the Father in heaven. So all we're doing is casting the light. All we're saying is, hey, check out what this group is doing. Check out how you can get involved. You pack, bags for disaster relief. You come alongside a historical organization. You come alongside literacy efforts, whatever. And when you start to talk about that, it really soothes the soul. It reminds us of our connective tissue and the brightness that actually exists. So again, I would just say use your universes, whether that's a mom who's driving carpool, or someone who's leading a business organization, or someone who's hosting a small group for the policy circle, or someone who is a public servant right now, or a lobbyist, or a lawyer, or whatever it is that you, a doctor, a nurse, teacher. Use this opportunity to start talking about the sweet stuff. Because God really does seed beautiful things into our daily lives. And I think we need to shift our focus, not to be naive, not to keep our head in the sands, not to roll up our sleeves and deal with the tough stuff. But I think we should commit ourselves as Christian to stirring one another up for love and good works, right? We're called to do that in Hebrews, and we've got to do more of that. And so we really try to stay very, very focused on that charge in our public life, and I think it encourages us.
So I'm gonna add 3 things to that. The first is, don't accept that there's no place for faith-based organizations in the actions of government. And let me give you an example. One of the big things that we undertook from day one of our administration is to completely overhaul and transform our behavioral health system in the Commonwealth of Virginia. It was overwhelmed. We know we are in crisis moment everywhere, from not just mental health challenges, but substance use disorder challenges. And we had a hospital-centric system that was failing. It was just overwhelmed. And as we went to redefine the entire system, well, we kept hearing back from faith-based organizations, and by the way, not just Christian ones, but ones run by Muslim community and the Jewish community and the Indian community. Everybody was, separation of church and state, we can't get access to that money. And the short answer is, no, that's wrong. And let us go answer the very simple question of, how can you help us? And so, first of all, don't proceed with preconceived views that are wrong. We need you. We need you in what we're doing. And by the way, we have lots of faith-based organizations now providing incredible support and services to Virginians through our behavioral health system today. The second thing that I would strongly encourage is also understand how to plug in. And I know this is the hardest part, and so I'm going to help you with that. I've got two colleagues over here that I want to stand up. So Ashley Trafficant, who handles all of our outreach, particularly in our faith-based communities, and Secretary Kelly G, who is our Secretary of the Commonwealth. And so these amazing leaders spend a lot of time trying to understand who is there and what they can do and how do they plug in. So if you need a place to plug in, that's it.
They're women, I might add.
The third thing that I would just ask, if not, I won't use the word beg, but I will use the word ask. We need you involved in state government. And so I appoint about 850 people a year to boards and commissions across the Commonwealth. So over a 4-year period, you can do the math, that's about 3,500 people that I appoint to boards and commissions. We need qualified, committed, capable folks who will serve on boards and commissions that range everything from literally our Board of Health all the way through to local boards that help us administer and oversee so many of the things that we're doing. And so again, if you have an interest in serving, you can find Secretary G and she will take your name, and just be careful because you usually will end up on a board. I can tell you that the pay is spectacular, it's $0. The benefits are unbelievable because you're working to change the future of the Commonwealth. That is an open invitation. And then finally, I just want to wrap all that up, which is, you see, at the heart of all of this is a recognition that we must constantly work to form that more perfect union. What an invitation our founders gave us. First, they grounded us in a basic belief that this is a nation that was not founded on a geography, but actually on an idea that we're created in the image of God, and therefore we have certain unalienable rights, and those are ours. And then we have to go to work to protect them and to advance them. And then they framed all of that in a constitution that allows us to press forward to form this more perfect union. But the issue here at hand is not government that does this. It's actually of the people, for the people, and by the people. And therefore, we must have you. Because I will tell you, if you leave it to government to try to figure everything out, we're lost. That's my personal philosophy. This is why we're here, is because we, in fact, saw a need and felt a call to be in the arena. And that is, I believe, what America is all about. And so this invitation that I've just cast to you is more than an invitation. Now I want to talk about responsibilities. So many people are doing so many good things. And therefore, I just want to say thank you for that. And you therefore have a responsibility to make sure that local governments and state governments and federal government know what you're doing. And then we can incorporate it and we can work through you as opposed to independent from you. The net of all of that is God's got an amazing plan, but his plan needs hands and feet. And that plan is one that we all need to pray over and understand our role in that, and then put our hand up and say, send me. And so thank you again for all your leadership. God bless you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you.